Welcome, everybody, and I'd like to call to order the Cleveland County Planning Commission public hearing for August 27th at 6 p.m. Sandy, could you do a roll call, please?
Commissioner David?
Oh.
Here. Commissioner Hanson?
Here.
Commissioner Malloy?
Here.
Commissioner Rose?
Here.
Commissioner Stearns?
Here.
Commissioner Van Dyke? Commissioner Levine?
Here. As before we start the actual public hearing, I'd like to just ask the commissioners, does anyone feel that this item that we're going to be addressing tonight causes any kind of conflict of interest with any conditions that you may have? And if I hear, I'm seeing no, so I just wanted to check if we agree to do that. The other request I have for everybody is, if you're not speaking, I'd ask everybody to please mute your audio so that we reduce the background noises. Okay, so tonight, if you look at the agenda, we have really one agenda item, and that's to review case number ORA20-0001. And really what this does is it adds to the Cleveland County ordinance a subdivision, or pretty much an ordinance, that is going to add a reentry facility as a CUP use. It also would provide some performance standards to measure that CUP, and it adds a new definition for this type of a reentry facility. Now, the reason we're here tonight is because the county commissioners has asked the planning commissioner to draft an amendment to the county's land use code to specifically address this type of land use. Currently, we have no regulations that govern a reentry center. So if the state wanted to potentially build something, it could potentially do that without a review of the county. This proposal, if it's adopted, would basically protect us against that type of situation. And also, since it's a CUP process, it would ensure that the public has very good input into any kind of application that should come down the pipe in the future. The public hearing process is what we've used in the past. Director Callahan, David, will start in a little while to present the overall brief view of the case, answer any questions that we may have, and clarify any points that we may be clarifying. Once that happens, we'll open up the public hearing to the public comments, and we'll consider all the public comments we hear tonight, as well as all the public comments we received prior to this public hearing, and then we would move into deliberations and make a decision on what we would do, and whatever our recommendation is, it would be forwarded to the county commissioners for their action, their review, and they would go through another whole public hearing process. The important part about tonight is this is not a public hearing to approve our reentry center. This is only a public hearing to adopt land use code that would allow the county commissioners a structured way to evaluate any future proposal down the road. Does anybody have any questions of what I've asked so far? Any commissioners have any questions? And if not, I would like to officially open up the public hearing for case number ORA20-0001. And I'll ask Director Callahan to start with his presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm David Callahan, Kootenai County Community Development Director. In your opening remarks, you actually covered a large part of what I was going to say, so I'm going to hit it and get it and move on, and I appreciate it. Thank you. I can add that the regulations that are before you have been developed in the customary way. By that I mean the staff rolled out a prototype You, the Plan Commission, met at regular workshops repeatedly and worked through every item in the ordinance, the draft ordinance. And so I believe the regulations that are before you are useful. I think if there may be some fine-tuning or changes you'd like to make tonight based on public testimony or your own thinking, but I believe it's a good starting point. You have, in your electronic packet, you've received the actual ordinance that our legal counsel, Pat Braden, has worked up, and you also have a grid that the chairman worked up that will allow you to go through each and every item, have a discussion about it, and make a deliberation. I will be able to share all of that on the screen as you go through it, if you would like. And
That would be helpful.
okay, I'll plan on that. And I neglected to mention, if it's confusing to people, the reason you can't see me in the Zoom meeting, even though I'm the Zoom host, I have my camera aimed at Commissioner Rose so that she can be viewed. Otherwise, she wouldn't have, she wouldn't be part of the Zoom meeting.
Any questions for David?
I should mention just quickly one other thing. I'll go over some new comments we just received. Because you haven't actually received them in email yet. Let me actually turn to the share screen and show you one of them. This was from Joanne Curtis, and if you're on Zoom, you ought to be able to read this. Let me get the pictures out of the way. But I'll just read it into the record. She says, "I want to express my strong belief that having a reentry facility located in North Idaho is critical to the successful reintegration of prisoners to our area. I have reviewed the proposed ordinance and realize this only allows for one to be considered and that it has not been approved. These prisoners will be returning to our area regardless of the level of support, and I feel that having a structured, supportive process in place will increase their chances of being successful." I also received just recently, so you could not have gotten copies, emails from the following individuals. Dwight Green emailed us saying that he is in favor of this proposal. Shannon Doherty emailed saying she is opposed. Katie McCullum is also opposed, and Eric Edgar is opposed. We all, in the emails that you received prior, there were a total of 10 people that were opposed, and one actually recommended alternative definitions and language for your ordinance, and you have that by email.
David, on the, do you want to wait until we get into the deliberations to answer questions about the renaming of this? Would that be the appropriate time?
Yes, sir, I think so. I think at this point it'd be useful, if you want, for you to go through the actual ordinance, and I'll pull that up for you.
Questions later.
Right.
Okay.
Unless you have questions of me now.
Anybody have any questions for David? I'll defer mine until after the public comments and we get into deliberations.
Okay. I'll pull up your grid at this time.
I would like to go to the public comment. David, you're going to facilitate that because you know who's there.
Oh,
and,
okay.
Who's on the phone, so.
Sure. Well, in that case, I'll start with the people that are here in person. And
before we start, I just wanted to make sure that when people speak, I asked a couple of things. If you could do it for us, it would be very helpful. Number one is that we obviously need your name and your address for public record. We ask people to present their ideas and comments in around 5 minutes, 3 to 5 minutes time frame. And the last thing is, if you are going to speak about the actual amendment to the code, it'd be really helpful to tell us what part, what sections of the code you're actually referring to, so we can make sure that we understand your request and consider it during deliberation. So, David, that's all I
Oh, okay. Well, I will just start reading the names that I have. First up is Robert and Michelle Pearson. They actually said they do not wish to speak. Robert or Michelle, have you changed your mind? Thank you. Craig, I can't tell if it's Hayden or Hasten. Really?
Hayden's where I live.
Oh, I'm sorry. Pardon me, Craig. Go right ahead,
Did
Craig.
you want me to come up?
Yes, please, and announce who you are.
Craig Kerwin from Hayden, and I read your proposal here, and it seems good, but I didn't see any mention of public safety in there. Shouldn't there be something to do with crimes committed against citizens in Kootenai County? What happens if that happens? You get your permit revoked or something to that effect? Is there some sort of limit on types of felonies that are going to be in this? Shouldn't that be mentioned in here as well? And how about some statistics from the halfway houses that are down on Sherman? I know they're mixed in through the residential area there. What's the recidivism of those convicts that have been down there? Maybe those are some important statistics that should play into this. That's all I have.
Thank you so much.
Next up is Matt Roeder, R-O-E-T-T-E-R.
Do I have 3 minutes?
Yes.
3 to 5.
3 to 5, okay. My name is Matt Roeder. I reside at 11405 Drover Drive in Hayden. Been a longtime citizen of this area since was one red light in Coeur d'Alene. I also am here today as a citizen, although I sit on the Hayden City Council. And there's a message I want to give you tonight as you look at writing your ordinance, because we in Hayden are also looking at writing an ordinance, a zoning ordinance, and how to deal with a reentry center. Let me go back 18 years ago. The Idaho Department of Corrections put money down on a property within a few hundred yards of my house, and I have 3 little girls. And they were going to put a reentry center in where I took my girls on a bicycle ride, took my golden retriever and my wife for walks. They didn't tell anybody. They just put the money down. And we were up in arms. We had a number of people that fought it, and they didn't come. But what really peeved me is they didn't let anybody know what they were doing. They just did it. So now let's go to current day, is that the Idaho Department of Corrections was going to locate a prison release facility on Hess Street in Hayden just recently. And what and this is after the city of Hayden wrote a letter to Josh T. Walt and the governor's office saying, we're responding to T. Walt's statement, public statement, that if a community does not want us, we won't come. So what we did is we wrote a letter to both the governor and Department of Corrections. We don't want you, basically. That's in the letter. So they had that. And then the county did an advisory vote, which I appreciate very much, which in the low 80%, which is an incredible number of people that said, no, we don't want a facility in Hayden. I looked at the votes in the city of Hayden, and we were in the high 80%. So all of a sudden, after we send the Department of Corrections a letter, and after that advisory vote, they all of a sudden are sneaking around, and they found a building that they were going to buy, and a foundation out of Minnesota was going to buy it, and an organization called Geo Reentry, which has 35,000 employees, was going to manage it. I don't trust them. So my message to you, commissioners, and I appreciate your time, is however you write this, you need to write it in a way that you can't trust what they do. So I would like to see as much accountability. I would like to see our sheriff be able to do an audit on the people that are going through this facility. Now, there's a question whether or not a housing facility does your ordinance address that, Or is it a rehabilitation facility? Because that was what was being considered for Hayden, was a rehabilitation, which drug testing, we don't know if there was going to be sex abuse, child molesters that were convicted that were going to go through this. We have no idea. They're not telling us anything. Why should we trust them? My concern is that they have a facility that does not house the prisoners that are released, that it could morph into one because it's kind of like a test. My question is, are there going to be people from Spokane that were convicted here and have to go through a program here? So are we going to be taking Spokane people? Are we going to be taking people from the 5 northern counties? Because this is District 1, which includes Boundary, Bonner, Kootenai, Shoshone, and Bennewa County. I mean, how big is this going to be? Has anybody heard? Has the Department of Corrections contacted anybody with the county saying, oh, by the way, we're looking at putting a facility in Hayden? We didn't know about it until the realtor called us. So my message is accountability. I like the part in here that says that only the Department of Corrections can own and manage the facility. I think that's great because we need accountability, if we can trust them, directly with them. And I'd like to see our sheriff somehow heavily involved and maybe a commission from the county that watches this facility and does an audit if they're going to do what they say they do. So that part of your planning and zoning ordinance, I'm hoping, and it probably has a special use permit, and that means they have to submit a plan, and I think that plan needs to be scrutinized by the people. I think the people need to see that. That's about all I have, but I'm really interested in seeing what you write because you're going to set precedents for Hayden. I've already talked to our city attorney and that I'm going to be here tonight, and so I appreciate the work that you have done and you're going to do, but please view it from the lens of you cannot trust the Idaho Department of Corrections. And I'll end with this. Josh Tewald said, if a community does not want us, it's a public statement, it's in the newspaper, we won't come. I would hope Kootenai County might send them a letter. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt.
Next up is Sandy White.
Hello, my name is Sandy White, and I'm from Hayden, Idaho. And I just want to thank you for allowing me to speak today. So I was just wanted to comment, though my comments will be short, is why is this being done when the vote in May was against the reentry center? Because I was opposed to it then, and I believe that it'll create an influx of crime and a housing problem and traffic problems when our area is already growing with implants from other areas. Housing costs have greatly increased here, so people being released wouldn't be able to find places to live. And so those are just a few of the reasons why I'm opposed to this. Okay.
Thank you.
Russ McLean.
Got you up there.
Do I have to state my name?
For you, Russ.
Russell McLean, 2360 East Hayden View Drive, Coeur d'Alene. Well, Matt really hit it good. He did his research. I'd really like to see, I don't want to nowhere near Hayden. Hayden's not the kind of town to have a place like that. And it could be out by the racetrack. It could be out there. I don't care. I'd like to see rules because, it's mostly going to be drug and sex offenders. That's what we house. I'd like to see several mile distance from the schools. Hopefully access to CityLink for employment. Matt said it the best. He did good. But I'd like to see some really tight rules on where it's placed. I'm not for it or against it. I just hired illegal labor. I would have rather hired prison labor for top dollar. They didn't hedge my inflation. But anyway, just really be tight and careful, and then with other growth around it, keep the growth around it industrious, not residential. I think it's kind of, you know, it's a consolidation of services. You can't take that away. You know, parole, probation, they're all going to one place instead all over town. That's a savings to the taxpayer. But it needs to be in a place where the growth is managed in a certain direction to where there's no kids anywhere and no access to dope, you know, kind of thing. And just be careful, is all I can really say, you know.
Thanks, Russ.
Doug Akunowicz.
Thank you, Director Callahan, commissioners. I did send an email, and Dr. Callahan mentioned he has shared it with you. I first want to say thank you for all the work you've done. I think you've been very diligent, and you've maintained impartiality, which I think is, I understand to be very important for you in your position, regardless of how you feel about the issue. I don't have to be as impartial as you, and I'm not. I don't like the reentry center. I don't want it to come to town. I know that's not what this meeting's about. We're here for language, and the one thing that I thought might help, particularly in light of Councilman Roeder's comments about what nearly happened in Hayden recently, is I believe we probably need a tighter definition than just the description of what a reentry center is based on, I believe it was pulled from the IDOC website. I think that description is too general. I think if someone has the ability to change the nature of that kind of facility slightly, call it something else, it may be a little bit more difficult for us to be sure that they go through the conditional use permitting process and allow our county commissioners and the public an opportunity to voice their positions on the issue. The language I provided is just a rough touch. I'm sure your legal counsel will have a better version of it, but the general idea is to refer to it as a correctional facility. It's a more general term, and then describing or defining a correctional facility as a place, building, facility, or location employed to house, sequester, rehabilitate, train, drug test, or confine persons convicted of a criminal offense or persons subject to a pretrial order, including but not limited to jails, prisons, penitentiaries, detention centers, and reentry centers. So we're inclusive of reentry centers, but frankly, if we believe the county commission should have the ability to review and approve a reentry center, they should probably have the ability to review and approve any kind of correctional facility that tries to land on us rather than just having it show up. That's my focus for tonight, and I know we'll have more to talk about when it gets to the Board of County Commissioners, but again, I appreciate all you've done, and I think you're doing a great job. And I can stand for questions or just be done, however that works.
At this point, we're just asking to be done.
All right, good deal. Thanks.
Thanks, Doug.
Robert Norris.
Good evening. My name is Robert Norris. You need my address? 10142 West Creekside Road in the unincorporated area of Cooney County. So I am against this project. I was against it when it was first presented, and I'm against it today, and I'll be against it in the future. The state wants to put 130 inmates. They want to increase our felony population here by 30% overnight. So things to consider, conditions to consider for this ordinance would be a fiscal impact analysis, which would include not only the financial stress that would occur to law enforcement and the community, but also as it pertains to quality of life. And what type of crimes are we likely going to see an increase in 130 felony inmates, increasing our felony population from the Cooney County Jail overnight by 30%. That's a pretty significant number. So I'd like to see a fiscal impact analysis done on what it's going to cost our community in dollars and in quality of life. I'd also like to see some language that would not allow this facility to be anywhere near a school, park, community center, anything like that. So I'd like to thank all of the commissioners for this opportunity to speak and all your work in this, and I hope you have a good evening. Robert Norris.
Thanks, Bob.
Peter Riggs.
Hello. Peter Riggs, 7104 West Kid Island Road in Coeur d'Alene. Thanks for the opportunity to speak. I know this isn't an easy thing that everyone's going to be going through, but I would like to echo some of the concerns of some of the statements that have already been made, particularly in regards to some of the lack of clarity that has been seen from the parties that are interested in locating the reentry facility here in Kootenai County. And I think these the city ordinances or the county ordinances that we're looking at are one of the last safety valves that we have to help protect ourselves and the concerns that the community has overwhelmingly expressed about this reentry facility. So my recommendation would be to delay debate and approval of these new ordinances until we can get language together that we feel more clearly protects the interests of the citizens of Kootenai County and can more directly protect us in regards to some of the lack of clarity that we've seen from the governor's office and from the State Department of Corrections. So while I think that that you know, adjusting the language of the ordinance is important, it's more important that we take the time to understand what it is exactly that we're up against and make sure that we have every safety check possible in the ordinances, in the language of the ordinances, to ensure that nothing happens here that we aren't completely in control of and aware of. So that would be my request, would be to actually delay adopting the language of these ordinances until we know better how to make sure that we have the right language in there that encompasses everything we need to do to protect our citizens. Thank you.
Thanks, Peter.
That concludes the people that are in attendance this evening. I'm going to just start at the top of the list and ask people that I don't recognize if they wish to speak. You can see if you're zooming in, I've got the cursor on an iPhone. If you are that person and you'd like to speak this evening, now would be your time. Sounds like we don't. It looks like Jake Geringer would be the next in line. Jake, did you wish to speak? You'll need to unmute yourself.
No, I do not at this time, Director.
Thank you kindly. How about Jeff Rogers?
No, I have no comments.
Thank you. Mark?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, that concludes everyone we have online.
Okay, so I would like to ask for someone to make a motion to close the public hearing for case number ORA20-0001. Would someone like to make a motion to close the public hearing?
I'd like to make a motion to close the public hearing.
Commissioner Stearns has made a motion to close the public hearing. Do I have a second?
Second.
Is that you, John? Commissioner Malloy has seconded the motion to close the public hearing. Sadie, I'll do a roll call on this. Commissioner David?
Yes.
Commissioner Stearns?
Yes.
Commissioner Hanson?
Yes.
Commissioner Malloy?
Aye.
Commissioner Levine. Aye. Motion passes. The public hearing is officially closed. And now we'll move into the deliberation part of this meeting. As David told us briefly before, we've gotten some comments in advance. He's read to us additional comments that we have received this week, and we've heard public comments from individuals in the county office. It's real important that we, as we go through this document, the grid that David put up for a while, that we try to make sure that we at least consider the public hearing, public comments, as we go over sections of this document that it pertains to. Hopefully, I've written down enough notes to be able to get it. Some of the areas, I think some of the things I heard tonight, we've attempted to do, and we may have gotten more clarity about some other ideas that people may have given us. So I just want to go through, and David, if you could put on I think that's the best way to do it, just go and we'll start on the top and work our way down. The way we normally do this is we just go to each line. Everybody has an opportunity to, if everybody's okay with it, we move forward. If people want to make suggestions for changes, we'll make suggestions, and then ultimately we'll try to get at least 4 commissioners to agree on whatever the proposed language should be. Is that okay for everybody? Okay. All right, so the first one, as David's pulling it up, is the zones that we, as you remember, we purposely omitted or restricted this to only commercial, mining, and light industrial. We wanted to stay away from residential, schools, parks, and other types of things as best we could. So my question is, as we go through this, does anybody have
You should read them. Get rid of them.
You
read them.
Or that we should add zones or delete zones, or is it good as proposed? And I guess the best way to do this is if anybody has a concern, I would ask that person to speak. If everybody, if you're okay with it, we would just simply, you don't need to speak. I'll assume silence denotes acceptance because of the Zoom capability. So anybody have any concerns?
It's this one.
Hearing none, I'm going to say that if we're going to, at this moment, consider these 3 zones as the only place that the center can be housing. The next one was the minimum acreage of 3 acres, and we discussed that to be 1 acre, 3 acres, 5 acres. We picked 3 acres because we believe that that's the size that they are. It's also big enough that it includes it from being in other areas of county having more than 1 in the area. Does anybody have any suggestions on the other acres, number of acres? Okay, so we'll go to the next one. The next one is about screening and fencing. Most of the facilities in the south actually have no fencing and screening, the way they look on the internet. We wanted to make sure that there was some screening and fencing there provided, and that's why we put this in there. Anybody have any recommendations or concerns? Okay. The next one is about parking, and this is really about more than 2 things. Having enough parking for the facility itself, but equally important is to make sure that wherever this facility would have been located, that it would not cause any kind of problems with traffic hazards, congestion, or any kind of problems to nearby streets. So this was our attempt to go and basically make sure that it really is located in a place that has the infrastructure in place to accommodate it. Everybody okay? Okay. The next one is very similar, actually. The next one is just voting that basically is required and had may want to spend some time on. This is really a conditional use permit, and really it talks about capacity that being limited to 100 versus the current facilities that have 30. We also asked them to do a reasonable study to say what is the reasonableness of these people in the center actually getting jobs in our community by contacting local companies and doing other things. And we wanted it also to be 1,000 feet away from residential, single-family, multifamily. So we didn't want to be anywhere near that area on that. Tonight we heard some other potential suggestions about a financial review or some kind of an economic impact statement that would look at what this facility would do to our costs as a county. That was mentioned. We also talked about not only the cost, but also the quality of life. We heard a lot about not being near schools and tight rules that when we find what this thing is, and we get to that, we get to the definition. So my question is, does everybody think that is this okay, or should we tighten it up more to include some of the points that we heard tonight?
Dave?
Anybody want to speak?
Dave?
Yes, Deborah?
I made a couple of notes from some of the comments from tonight. I kind of like Matt Roeder's idea about, and I don't know if this is the place to put it, I suppose it is, to appoint a commission to monitor the facility if one does, if there's ever an application and it's ever approved. I like that. I like that idea. Okay.
Move that over, somebody appointed by the county to oversee that they're living up to their commitments to the county.
Yes.
Okay.
And then another one is, I like Bob Norris's suggestion to add in the list of facilities, it has to be 1,000 feet away from, to also include community centers.
Question about the 1,000 feet. Is that standard language, David?
Yes, sir. It's pretty common. But you can choose any number you think is appropriate for Kootenai County.
Well, I mean, as far as from schools and stuff like that, 1,000 feet is not that far. So I didn't, but basically that's what we have for a lot of the other CUPs is 1,000 feet from wherever we're trying to protect it from.
Yeah, again, I think if you have concerns and you have a number you think 4 of you can agree to, I'd go for it.
1,000 feet doesn't seem like a lot, but.
Yeah, I personally would ask you to think about is we heard tonight about public safety, we heard in the comments that we received before tonight about safety, we hear about schools, we all have talked about that, so should we be looking at making this further away from anything that we think is a public safety issue?
What, 5,280 feet is a mile?
Yes.
Why don't we shoot for that?
What does everybody think about that? We need obviously we need to have 4 people agree on a distance. Darren, what's your thought?
Given the criteria that we have, that these are only going to be in commercial, mining, and light industrial, is there any of these facilities that are even that close to those particular zones? In other words, they're going to be over 1,000.
Yeah, there probably are.
Yeah, particularly in commercial. I don't necessarily think they would be in mining or light industrial, but it is certainly possible in the areas that are currently zoned commercial. And of course, bear in mind there could be a zone change request, in the future that, to change it to one of those to, as a precursor to a CUP application. That being said, I'd echo David, whatever buffer you're comfortable with, I mean, we can certainly change it, and that's why we're here.
Wes, what's your thought? There was. I think he's frozen.
He's frozen.
Mr. Chairman, while we're waiting, you're coming through amazingly poorly. It's a technical issue on our side. I can't imagine what's going on. We've used these speakers repeatedly.
Okay.
Are the speakers too close together?
I've used the same
Okay.
setup routinely.
Yeah, well, the other planning commissioners are coming in third.
Oh, that's right, they are.
Dave, are you using the microphone on your computer?
Yeah, I was wondering, he doesn't look like he's using a headset.
What, David?
Are you using the microphone on your computer?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
And I've used it in the past.
I noticed, and it worked before. I'm only interrupting you because it must be hard for the public to hear, because I'm having a hard time, and I'm right next to the speaker.
I don't have an answer. Should I call up on the phone?
You know, it wouldn't hurt.
Okay. I gotta get a phone. Hold on a second.
Make sure you mute your computer, though.
He didn't hear, he walked away. I can mute him on this side. Yes, sir. I can hear you, Wes. I'm going to get out of the screen sharing so I can mute David's computer. David, if you call in on your phone, I'm going to mute your computer, okay?
My name is.
Sorry. That's what I did. I used the phone, but still tried to keep the computer on that one day.
David?
Yeah, let me make sure you're
Oh,
muted.
that's
on
so
the other
much
side.
better.
We're getting an echo, but I can at least hear you better.
Okay.
Oh,
well,
wow.
that's actually
Wow,
good.
whoa, way better.
Okay, yeah, I shut off everything on my computer.
Well, perfect.
Right now. Okay, so Wes, I was up to you about, what do you think about the buffer?
I think 1,000 feet is pretty small, especially with areas where you might have problems involving kids. I'm not sure a mile is realistic in terms of how development is situated where something like this might occur, or maybe a half a mile.
Okay. Madeline?
I think 1,000 is too little as well, and the mile may be threatening. But I think a greater distance is for.
Okay. John?
I would agree. I think a mile is too much, and I could be persuaded that 1,000 feet is not enough, so I guess our compromise then would be something like a half mile.
Okay, so, Wes, John, you're okay with a half a mile. Anybody, Barry, you okay with a half a mile?
Yes, I am. So 2,500 feet, is that the word?
Yeah, whatever, well, half a mile is a little more than, yeah, but a half a mile.
I can walk a mile in 15 minutes. It's really not that far.
I couldn't hear you, Deborah.
Oh, I just said that I can walk a mile in 15 minutes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. And Deborah, I'm assuming you're okay with a half a mile, or you want to?
No, I'm going to stick with the mile.
Okay, so we are going to change the, I'll agree to a half a mile also. So Deborah will be at a mile, but we're going to change this to be a half a mile or 2,500 feet, whatever you prefer it to be in, as far as language is concerned. All right, how about other areas here about the questions David and Pat, the monitoring group that Deborah talked about, does that have to be part of the land use code, or is that just simply what the county commissioners would establish?
I think it's actually built into the CUP process. Every time any CUP is approved, it's known that you have to meet all the conditions of approval, and that any violation of any condition is grounds for revocation of the CUP. That's the way the CUP process works. So I don't know that we need necessarily to build anything in, but I don't know that there's anything that stops us either.
Right. That and the current drafting does include provisions for compliance reports at 1 year and then at 2-year intervals thereafter. And that was at the request of the Planning Commission during our last workshop.
Right. So those compliance reports can be reviewed by anybody in the county or the citizens also, to be able to monitor what they're actually doing.
Right.
I just wonder if maybe that first year, we might not try to have some kind of review or committee looking into maybe at 30 days and then maybe 6 months and then at the year. Because that's generally, I think, where we would see problems show up. That's at least how we do it with our rentals.
Right. And I think Pat reminded me is I think we should probably defer that discussion until item K, because that is where we talk about the reporting and compliance. And if we wanted to put something in there that we expect this facility to cooperate with the county, which is obviously they need to anyway, but something to be more specific because of the concerns that they may not be always open to some things that we've heard tonight. So I think we'll defer that until K, item K. Is there anything else in item F that you think that needs adjustment?
I do, but Pat wants to say something first.
I was just, I might be anticipating what you wanted to say, Deborah, but I think there was, she mentioned in public testimony there was a request to add community centers, and I think that is very appropriate.
Okay. So is everybody okay with adding community centers to this list of things? Or is anybody against doing it? Let me say it that way. Hearing no consent. Okay. Pat, could you tell us what you believe a community center would be?
Well, I think probably the best example would be the Kroc Center.
Boys and Girls Club. Boys and Girls Club.
The Boys and Girls Club would be another good example. Property and buildings that serve the greater community in some way or, in some fashion. I don't necessarily know that we have to have it as a defined term, but those are the kinds of things that at least I would contemplate to be community centers. A Grange Hall potentially.
Mm-hmm.
So. Yeah, I mean, the rule of thumb, if it isn't a defined term, you can go to the dictionary and that's a valid source of a definition. That being said, if the Planning Commission wants a definition of community center, we can certainly provide one.
We have places of assembly, which includes community centers and places of worship.
Oh, that would cover.
Well,
I was going to say places of worship.
Yeah, we
too,
could even. Yeah, I mean, we could even, include those terms: places of worship, place of assembly.
Yeah, because that's already defined, right?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, that's one of our defined uses. Is it?
Yeah, and certainly, actually, I was just thinking that, well, yeah, the Boys and Girls Clubs, that would be a place of assembly under our rules. The Croc Center would be both, a place of worship and a place of assembly. So we could just do it that way, and they're already defined terms, so.
So if we put in place of assembly,
And places of worship.
place of worship, that covers what we're talking about, and those are already defined.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Dave, all right.
One more, Dave. Dave, one more. Oh, I'm sorry.
I want to make sure I understand. Does anybody have concerns with adding place of assembly and worship, which are defined terms in our code? Okay, I'm not hearing any negative, so we'll add those to that list that we have here. Okay, Deborah, what's next?
Well, I still want to fight to lower the 100 offenders down some. In part, Bob Norris kind of made a good point when he said that that would increase the felon population in our community, and this is just with what I would call one class, 30%. And of course, you know, they're going to be rotating out of the facility. I think that it was expected that every year, 70% of the inmates would be released from the facility. So I'm just wondering if we might not want to lower that number to, I don't know, maybe 70 to start with, because I think we can always up it later. And you know, if all goes well, it'd be much easier to increase the number of inmates or residents than it would be to lower it later.
Okay, what do people think about the number? We started with 130 because that's what the other centers were at. We did lower it to 100 because we wanted to be cognizant of some of those concerns we had with the number of people coming out. Let me ask, I guess the way to ask this was, does anybody want to change the number from 100 besides Deborah?
I wouldn't mind changing it to 75, 70, whatever.
Okay, okay, so let me just go and ask how many people want to keep it at 100. I'm just going to go and do a poll. Wes, what do you want? 100? Would you want to keep it at 100?
I'm okay with 100, but I'm okay to go down to 75 if you want.
Well, I'm trying to get agreement. So, okay, Barry, what is your view?
I kind of with Wes, unfortunately. I'm doing 100 and I can go down to 75.
It's the women. Women are supposed to not be able to make up their minds, not men.
Well, okay, yeah, John. I think we ought to stay at 100. All right. So we have John and I are at 100. We have Barry and Wes could be at 100, but can go to 75. We got Madeline at 75, and I'm assuming Deborah would be okay with 75. So we really,
Yes.
unless Barry and Wes have to make a decision on whether it's 100 or 75.
I'll go
100, Barry?
100.
Okay, Wes?
100.
Okay, so we'll keep it at
Tried.
100 with Madeline and Deborah wanting a lower number. Okay. Just writing notes. Okay, what else do we have? Anything else on this one?
Just a comment. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Section F deals with capacity and it's linked to employability. And then the second issue is distance from, and then there's a list of relatively vulnerable places. That seems to be the focus of section F. So I'm not sure including any local monitoring of occupants is to be placed there, or any prediction of local impact or impacts on community style, type of life or services. That would come, I think, under M.
Okay.
I'm just asking that you think so. Okay, you think?
Okay.
Okay.
I don't know, and you're asking for a prediction of, okay, all right.
Okay, anything else on this? I think so what I have here is, we have at least the majority of people would like it to be a half a mile versus 1,000 feet. We have added places of assembly and worship, and that was, I believe, unanimous. And then we have 4 people, Barry, West, John, and myself, who want to keep it at 100, and Madeline and Deborah wanted to lower it, so it'll stay at 100. So Pat will make those changes to the document. The next page, on page 2, is item G, which basically says that one facility can't be within 10 miles of another facility, which means you're pretty much going to have probably one facility that had it at all. So does anybody have any concerns with keeping it at 10 miles? Okay. Is there any comments? Okay. All right, the next one is just pretty much that it has to apply to all, it has to comply with all the states, county, federal regulations. I'm assuming that's okay with everybody. The signs, the next one on I is really about having a sign that the only sign that's going to be there are the ones that are authorized by the Idaho Department of Corrections, is what we've actually said. Anybody have any concerns with that or recommendations? Okay. I'll go to the next one, is J, and that really is that it has to be properly maintained and in good condition at all times. Nobody has any concerns with that one? Okay, now we're back to K, and K was intended to provide the citizens as well as the county information on monitoring what they're doing. We were very concerned about their ability to operate within into the agreed upon standards that we're setting, and we asked for security plans, conceptual security plans. We wanted monitoring and transportation, how are they going to get these people to work, how are they going to monitor them. We heard today a little about what happens when somebody commits a crime. I'm assuming they would not be in the center, but do we need to do something to talk about that? This is the area that we may want to put in the financial impact on the county or the quality of life of the citizens. We may want to put in here the monitoring that we heard, I think Deborah made a suggestion that we would have a 6-month, yeah.
I'm clicking in and out of, so I'm going to make my comments while I can be heard. On K,
Okay.
I keep clicking in and out of connection. I think in K is where if we want to have predictions of local fiscal impact on, let's say, law enforcement or communities and services, this would be the place to locate it.
Right. Okay, anything else, Wes?
Not on that one, unless I've misassigned it as far as a section, but I think it's okay in K.
Okay, so let me ask everybody, does anybody not agree that we should put in here this fiscal and services impact on the county as a requirement of a narrative to provide us that kind of information. And so let's start with that one first. Does anybody have a concern with putting something like that in the in item K? Okay. Yes.
So in N, it talks about the economic feasibility study. And in for us what the economic effect on the police or the sheriff department would be. Isn't that an area where we should address and add the economic feasibility or impact in that section?
Yes. I think what we have to do, Barry, is figure out. So when we're talking about the economic, what I heard from the public comments was, what is the economic impact this will have on the county services? And it may not just be the police, it could also be the ambulance systems and other things like that.
Yeah, that's what I heard too, Dave. I'm just saying that the economic impact areas in the end, that we should get it in there, not in K. K is a security issue, it's the police feasibility, but it's not the ambulance. So, however you want to address it.
I think that's where it does belong. I think it does belong down.
Okay, I see, Barry. I missed that one. Okay, I got you. So we'll defer that until M then. Okay.
So I have something in K.
Okay.
Can we add in monitoring, can we say GPS monitoring? Because there have been escapees from these facilities.
Well, we had this discussion, Pat. Can you, do we have the ability to talk about the types of security that we demand? Because we talked about that during a workshop, and we decided for some reason not to put in GPS type of, or the ankle bracelets, whatever you call it, Deborah.
Yeah, because I certainly understand the concern, but at the same time, I think we get a little too far into potentially usurping the authority of the Idaho Department of Corrections in terms of how they manage their inmates. So.
Yeah, I think that was your logic last time, is that we don't have the necessary ability to tell them the security protocols. We have the ability to ask them to ensure that we have safety and that they're going to tell us on a conceptual basis what they're going to do, but we don't have to tell them, we can't tell them everything. So I think unless anybody has does anybody feel strongly that we should consider some type of information on the types of security, like an ankle bracelet or whatever else? Or just leave it as this, and it'll be part of the CUP process, would be evaluate the security that they are telling us they're providing, and therefore we would then decide, or county commissioners would decide, whether that is adequate enough to approve any kind of a CUP. Okay, so I'm hearing that any other potential changes on K? Okay, so I'm saying everybody's okay with what we have here. Then L is a site plan, just a normal site plan. I don't think there's anything. Anybody have any concerns on site plans on L? Okay, then we go to M, where Barry and Wes were talking about that we need to try to incorporate, is what I heard, that something in the economic feasibility study to include the cost to the county on their services. Right, Barry? Is that what you were saying?
More of an economic impact that it would have on the services for the county.
Okay. Economic impact on the services of the county. Does anybody have a problem with adding that
conducts an economic feasibility study and economic feasibility and economic impact on the county services regarding the application. That seems to cover that concern, but have we left anything out which is important?
Well, I'm going to my notes on the public comments. Anybody have any idea, other things that we may have missed?
Dave, actually, I think there was mention of fiscal impact, impact of services, and impact of quality of life to the community, and I think those are all fair subjects to cover. And I can massage, the language to include all those, in a manner consistent with what Wes suggested.
Right, yeah, no, I think the quality of life is on my notes, you're right. So could you add those in and just, you'll put it in the language that will be clear and concise.
Well, I'll try.
Anything else?
Try my best.
Anything else in M?
Well, is this where we said we were going to consider, or what I suggested under F to do points, just kind of do a little more monitoring that first year of the facility?
Okay, what do people think? Do people support having let's say a year one or year two, to have a more detailed, hands-on approach to monitoring? So we'd be expecting them to be helping in that monitoring of the facility.
But that would be under letter O.
You keep moving it.
Okay, but do people agree conceptually on the idea before we decide where it goes?
Yeah, it does say.
Are you okay with that idea?
It does say additional periodic review.
Sorry, Dave, could you go ahead and restate that?
Yeah, what Deborah, what we heard was having a group that would be proactively monitoring. The way this is set up today is that they provide data to us, for the county, and then we would evaluate and see if they're living up to their responsibility. What we heard tonight was maybe having a group that would include maybe the sheriff's department or something like that, that would be proactively monitoring them in the beginning to make sure that there are no misinformation or other types of things. So it's more extensive monitoring. Then once that year or two happens, then if they comply with everything, then we back off, is what I'm hearing, the suggestion.
At this point, I'd have to refer back to Pat to see what kind of language that would actually be and how we could affect that, because that's another department, the sheriff's department, having to take that up.
Right. Well, yeah, but conceptually, you're not opposed to the idea. Okay. And Madeline, yeah, John?
Well, it depends on, you said we would take a more active, or after a year, we would back off. If we is planning and zoning.
No, I don't mean we. I don't mean we.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Like something we ought to do.
No, it's not us. I mean we, the county. And I'm not proposing this. I'm just trying to see if there's agreement of what Deborah has talked about and what we heard tonight. So basically the county commissioners would establish a committee, or whatever, to do some monitoring. How that is composed would be up to the county commissioners. Unless we told them what we thought.
I think we should, as a recommendation of this, for the commissioners to decide how they're going to do that.
Yeah, it would be. Madeline, what's your thought?
I'm fine with having a monitoring committee. And that commissioners should make up their minds, what they would like to see, who they would like to see doing that monitoring.
Okay. And John, are you okay with the fact that not us?
Yeah, I think that, here again, I think that we're encroaching upon somebody else's territory, but if it's not us, I think I can be to go along, to get along.
Okay. So am I hearing, I think I've heard at least 4 people that say that we'd like to incorporate some active monitoring for a initial period of a year or 2, let's say a year or 2, whatever. And that composite of that would be, it's a recommendation for the county commissioners to decide how that would be organized.
And Mr. Chair, I guess the question I have too is how much are we overflowing into the conditional use or the special use permit process? Is this something we should be doing or something that would happen at that time?
Well, again, I personally, if I was voting on this, I would vote not to do this. Because I think that the county commissioners should make up their own decisions on how to monitor any kind of contract that is done or any kind of CUP. David Callahan's group does that. And having another layer of doing it, if there's a need to do it, they can establish it without our permission or recommendation. And if they don't need it, then they wouldn't establish it. I think I personally think that this is confusing land use code with management of the oversight of the project. And yeah.
I think it's overstepping.
Yeah, what I would like, what I would do is basically make the comments we could recommend outside of this particular land use code that they may want to consider doing this, but that's the responsibility of the county commissioners to ensure that these things are done right. It's not the planning commission. We're here trying to develop code so that they can evaluate an application, but not necessarily to continually evaluate the effectiveness of the reentry center in their operation. That's not a land use thing. That's an operational thing, in my view.
I think we put in, or the Planning Commission put in the transitional housing ordinance, something similar to some kind of monitoring. Pat's going to look it up.
Yeah.
Like I said, we should just make a recommendation to the commission because it's outside of this ordinance.
Right. Well, I think John and I and now you, so do we have a 4th person that would like to just simply make this outside of the code and make it into a recommendation that we can provide to county commissioners?
I'll do that. I agree.
Okay.
I think the county commissioners can do it, maybe even do it more than we would, but we should have freedom to do that. And
Right.
here are our recommendations.
Okay, so we have a majority of people that want to just make it into a recommendation. Okay? Anything else in item M?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I need a clarification. Did we decide to include in the report or I forgot what the term was we used, that I have a problem with quality of life because it is so vague and ambiguous and hard to determine what has an effect on the quality of life. So where do we stand on that sentence that we
Right now, John, it's in the proposed language is the county services, the impact on the county services and the quality of life is in there. So you would recommend wanting to take quality of life out because it's a very difficult term to define. Okay. Yeah. Well, but again, Wes?
I agree with John, but when you put quality of life in, it's not that it's going to be precisely defined, but it kind of announces to the Board of County Commissioners that this is an important consideration. So in the CUP drafting, they might want to factor it in terms of making some choices one way or the other. Because it's incredibly difficult to define quality of life, but it's an expectation which may then flavor how they draft the conditional use permit.
Do other people feel we should take it out besides John so far?
Well, I agree with John in the sense that it's difficult to define, but doesn't that go back to what Pat's recommendations are?
Well, in this case, I'm not sure it would just be the word quality of life. I don't think Pat, unless Pat, can you come up with different words that are more clear about what quality of life is?
Well, I would envision quality of life in this context as being, what is the, was their experience with escapes, people committing crimes while they're out in the community, recidivism of people that do successfully complete the program. And then it kind of dovetails into the other factors as well. Your services, your fiscal impact. I think that all, those are all factors that would be considered in that rubric of quality of life. Now that being said, we could narrow it down to say experience with are there increases of crime where these facilities have been located in the past? What would be expected of this facility, both people in the program and people that have graduated from it? Potentially that could, impacts to the criminal justice system, perhaps. I'm just trying to kind of brainstorm on the fly what we could use as versus quality of life. I'm okay with it, and I'm okay with you guys recommending. Basically, you're recommending to me what the change should be, not necessarily the other way around.
Right. I guess, Wes.
What about this? I'm just looking at M, the wording of M, just at the beginning, first sentence, and you might say, the applicant shall conduct studies of the economic impacts on county services and public safety and the economic feasibility of the application period.
I like the phrase public safety. I might massage that a little bit more, but I do like, maybe we could change public safety, or change the phrase quality of life to public safety at a minimum and incorporate that. So in a way substantially similar to what Wes suggested.
It's the public safety, this is a reentry center if it is proposed, and it's the public safety, which is what the concern is with maintaining the quality of life.
Yeah, I would concur with that assessment.
Okay, is everybody okay with that? When I was thinking of quality of life, I think public safety is actually a good way of looking at it.
I like public safety.
Okay. John, you okay with public safety?
And I think so, because when you look at public safety, you most likely are going to start looking at numbers of crimes and recidivism and that kind of thing. And when you're talking about quality of life, if I have insomnia, is it because the reentry center was established, or was it something else? There's no way to quantify it. So yeah, I think
Right.
it's better about public safety.
Okay, so on item M, what we're really doing is, and Pat will work on the the words, something like what Wes is saying, is we're gonna basically expect some type of an impact study on the county services cost and the impact of public safety on these type of facility like this. I think everybody agrees with that. I have not heard anybody who disagrees with it. Anything else on item M? Okay, we'll move to item N, which is conducting neighborhood meetings regarding the application. Shall be done. The purpose of this is it's going to be done prior to the application, so that they would get some input from the community before they even apply, and that may in itself cause them to not apply. But if it does, they do apply, at least we'll have some feedback. Any changes to item N?
No change, but I have a comment that pretty well addresses Mr. Cook's concern about them sneaking around and not telling anybody anything.
Yes, yeah. I think you're right, John. Okay. Item O is basically the permit is for 5 years with a recurring 5 years, which I think is pretty much standard in with CUPs. I think that's true. Anybody have any
It's
questions?
going back to that earlier point concerning monitoring, which may be my recommendation. If that's to be suggested, it could say, conditional use permit for a reentry facility may be granted for a period not to exceed 5 years, including initial monitoring, comma, and may be renewed for successive periods, and the rest is the same.
Yeah, the monitoring was, I thought we had an agreement of 4 people who said that should be a recommendation to the, at least that's the way I have it in my notes, to the county commissioners, but not a requirement. We should not be taking their authority away. So anything else on letter O? Okay. This one here on letter P, right now we have it only for the state of Idaho. If you looked at the comments we got in advance of the meeting, there was a recommendation to add to that the county operation. So there was, that is not owned and operated by the county as well as the state. So I don't know if anybody wants to add the county to this, and there was somebody who liked the fact that it was only by the state, but is anybody who would like to go and add, let me ask a different way. Who wants to keep it, who does not want to keep it the way it is? Everybody okay with the way it is? Or do we want to add county to it? If I hear nothing, it tells me that we want to keep it the way it is. And if I'm wrong, let me know. But
Dave, just one note on that. Any county jail, detention facility, correctional facility is already covered under public safety facilities in the code.
oh, so if the county wanted to do this, we could do it without anything else?
It would be, yeah, wherever public safety facilities are allowed.
Okay, yeah, right, but then, okay, so therefore it's not needed at all?
I don't think so. And, you know, I don't know what the new sheriff's going to do, but I know that there currently are no plans to have an off-site correctional or work release or county jail type of facility anywhere outside of the current sheriff's campus and our court hold here on the courthouse campus.
Okay. So is everybody okay with just leaving it the way it is? I'm hearing the answers, I think yes. Okay, and now the definition, again, we also have a recommendation on the same, by the same individual to make the definition a little more definitive about what types of facilities we're talking about. This one here came from the state itself. I think that's where Pat got it from, at our request.
So Dave?
Yeah, Deborah?
Two things. I don't have in front of me a copy of what Doug's suggestion was here. Somebody could read that, that would be helpful. And then also, I'm wondering if we can't add, let me read this second, a residential or a non-residential facility, because my understanding is what they want to put in Hayden is more of a day facility, so they won't be spending the night. So we may want to add those words, and non-residential.
Or just facility.
Or just facility?
Mr. Chairman, just start off with facility. That speaks to it broadly.
That would cover both?
They cover anything.
Mm-hmm.
And if I may, while I'm monopolizing things, the correctional facility suggestion goes back to what Pat just said. We actually already have language for correctional facilities in the code. They're already allowed, they're already defined. And I'm worried that if we mix them up in this language, that we defeat the purpose that you're trying to achieve, which is expressly cover reentry centers. Because we don't have anything in our regs on reentry centers.
Okay, understand.
David?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Are those two definitions of correction facility or center and reentry center side by side? They're not overlapping, but they're distinctively separate definitions?
I would need to actually take a break and pull the land use code out and look, unless Pat can find it.
What was Wes looking for?
He wants to know how the language is distinctly defined in the code.
The language
of correctional facilities are caught underneath the public.
It's just the laundry.
Yeah.
Wes, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Under the definition of public safety facility, there's a laundry list of the types of facilities that fall within that definition, and it includes detention or correctional facilities. Just in that language, and I think it's pretty
Broad enough.
Yeah, I think it's pretty well understood what that means, and I don't think it necessarily needs further
refinement.
Specificity. Yeah.
Right. So what I'm hearing is we would eliminate the word residential, and it would just be a facility. Therefore, whether it's residential or a day thing or whatever, it's a broader category by saying just a facility. But we would leave this as it is.
That'll work.
And not go and put in a definition of a correctional facility, which is already defined in our code. Is everybody okay with that?
I like it.
Or is anybody not okay with that? Let me go that way. Anybody not okay with removing the word residential and keeping everything else? Okay, so that's what I've heard now. I'd like to just recap what I think we've agreed upon with Pat making the actual edits. We're giving him what we want, and then Pat will go and make the edits. On page 1, item A through E is agreed upon as submitted. Item F, we agreed to a half a mile of for residential zones and all those other definitions. We've added their places of assembly and places of worship, and we kept the number of capacity to 100 individuals. Item G.
community center, Dave.
No, but I think we didn't use the word community center, we substituted it in places of assembly and places of worship, because those are defined terms. And they include the Croc Center, and other things that would be defined as community centers, right, Pat?
Yes.
Okay, good enough.
Okay. Items G through J is approved as submitted. Actually, item K also is all the way, actually, G through L is agreed upon as submitted. Item M, we are adding, again, Pat will work on the language, but the economic impact on the county services and public safety. And we will, in our submittal to the county commissioners, we will recommend to them they could potentially have somebody do some oversight of this at the beginning. And then the rest items N through the definition, N through P are all agreed as submitted, and then the definition is we eliminated the word residential and kept everything else the way it is. So Pat, is that pretty much what you have?
Yes.
Okay. So the only thing I wanted to address before we talk about making a motion, there was a suggestion that we should delay this process in order to give us more time to really understand what the state would may be doing, and then define these particular categories even more. I think that we all are aware that this is only the first step in a long process, that this would be submitted to the county commissioners, and between now and their public hearing that would be scheduled at whatever date, there's more opportunities for the public to provide additional input that can be considered by the county commissioners into adopting a final regulation later on. So I think we should probably move forward, is my recommendation, only because having this move forward is probably safer than trying to delay it in case the state does want to get something done without our being aware of it. That's just my 2 cents. And unless anybody thinks differently, I'd like to ask for a motion to approve case number ORA20-0001 as submitted, and the agreed upon changes that we've outlined tonight. Would someone like to make a motion to that?
So moved.
Is that Deborah?
Madeline.
No,
Madeline, okay.
Madeline.
Okay, thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
That was Barry? West, okay. Okay, now, I want to remind everybody what we kind of talked about. When we do a roll call, that we can vote for it, we can vote against it, or we could explain our vote about why we're voting for it. So you could say that you're voting for it for these reasons, but you don't like this particular thing, or whatever else. But I just want to make sure that people have an opportunity to tell the county commissioners how they voted and why they voted that way. Pat has indicated to David that would be very helpful for their considerations at a later date. So, Sandy, do you want me to do the roll call, or you want to do the roll call?
I think it would be better for you as far as sound.
She said we would
Okay.
prefer for you to do it.
Okay, so Commissioner David?
Vote to accept. My only reservation was on number of people. I would like it a little lower, but I'm willing, the rest of the ordinances would put in the public, so I vote for it.
Okay, thank you. Barry?
I approve motion because I think that the additions that we made of the increase in distance and the expansion of places to be at that distance, but most particularly item M, where the inclusion of prediction of impacts on county services and public safety was added to the necessity of an economic feasibility study of the application. I think that provides the public with some assurances that the state has accountability from the beginning.
Right. Okay. John?
I'm in favor. I was not going to comment, but when Wes said prediction of the feasibility study or the fiscal study, not only a prediction, as I understand it, but also a report over time after the inception of the facility.
Yes.
Yeah, so I'm in favor.
And okay, Deborah?
I want to ask Pat to clarify something before I respond, because I've gotten a lot of questions about this. A number of people have asked me, Pat, about why we can't just put an ordinance in here that just totally refuses these kind of facilities in the county. Could you explain to those that are listening of why we can't do that, or why we won't be doing that?
Well, I suppose it is possible, although I think that would be more likely to be subject to a legal challenge from the state. And I also think this way due process is provided to both the state and the public to persuade the county commissioners whether it should be there or not. And I've always been of the maybe not always, but I'm of the school of thought that it's better to regulate than prohibit, absolutely, especially given given what I think on certain other issues that are totally unrelated to this. But like I said, both substantively, it allows, at least for the possibility, there's no guarantee it's going to be approved, but it also through the due process provisions like the neighborhood meeting, public hearings for the hearing examiner and potentially county commissioners, it prevents, or it at least mitigates the concern about the state sneaking around and doing something behind everybody's back. I think transparency is also something that this promotes. So that'd be my response to that.
Thank you. So I'm going to approve this with my reservations on the number of offenders. I'd like to still see that number lowered and let them prove themselves. And also I would like still would like the half-mile distance be increased to a mile.
Okay. Thank you. And I also do approve it. I really appreciated tonight the comments we got from the public tonight, as well as the ones that we got previously, because I think with their help, we actually made this code more structured and protects the county more than it was when we started this process tonight. So some of the concerns I had were reduced because of the way this was modified. And I do think that having this code protects the county versus not having one at all. So I vote yes. So all commissioners have voted yes. The motion carries. This amendment will be sent with the revisions that we made tonight to the county commissioners with our comments as well as recommendations on monitoring. And I think that is it. I'm just gonna, Sandy, do I need a motion to,
Yes.
to adjourn, or can I just adjourn?
Yes, you do need a motion.
I need a motion?
Yes, sir.
Okay, can someone make that? I'm having trouble hearing, I'm sorry, David.
John Malloy makes a motion that we adjourn.
Thank you, John. Second?
Barry seconds.
Okay, thanks, Barry.
7:41.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, motion carries, and we are adjourned at 7:41 tonight. Thanks, everybody.